For all our viewers joining in on WION at this hour, this of course is breaking news and a developing story that WION will be closely tracking for more updates. As we know, a military chopper carrying the Chief of Defence Staff Bipin Rawat and 13 others crashed shortly after takeoff in Tamil Nadu in India. That is what the Indian Air Force has so far confirmed. That is a story that we are tracking with all details as of now, getting you as much expert opinion on the matter as possible. What we do know so far is that in an unfortunate incident, an army chopper carrying India's Chief of Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat, has crashed in India's southern state of Tamil Nadu. The Indian Air Force said that it was an IAF Mi-17 chopper which crashed near Coonoor in the state of Tamil Nadu. It has been now confirmed that the Chief of Defence Staff, Bipin Rawat, was on board. An inquiry has been ordered to ascertain the cause of this accident as of now. Sources also say that a total of 14 people were on board the chopper, including the staff and some family members of General Rawat. Search and rescue operations are currently underway. Some more information that we can confirm at this point. Sources are saying that 5 bodies have been recovered, including 3 injured from the crash site. It's important to note that rescue operations are currently underway in Tamil Nadu in India, so information is flowing in as we speak. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh is set to brief Parliament on the incident soon, and according to sources, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has briefed Prime Minister Modi as well. Some more information coming in. The Indian Air Force Chief will be reaching the crash site in Coonoor soon and will be assessing the situation. Once more, for all our viewers who are tuning into WION right now, a military chopper carrying Chief of Defence Staff Bipin Rawat and 13 others crashed after takeoff today in Tamil Nadu in India. This is what the Indian Air Force has now confirmed. Some more information that we can confirm at this point. 5 bodies have been recovered from the crash site. A search is currently on for more people. Some more information. General Rawat's wife, other senior defence officials, Air Force personnel were among the 14 people that were on board this chopper. The Indian Air Force earlier tweeted that an IAF Mi-17 V5 helicopter with Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat on board met with an accident today near Coonoor in Tamil Nadu, and now an inquiry has been launched into the cause of the incident. That is what the Indian Air Force confirmed earlier in the day. Some more details that we can provide at this point. General Rawat had taken a flight from Delhi, that is the Indian capital, to Sulur earlier today, and that flight manifest had listed 9 people. This flight from Sulur included 5 more, possibly crew members. Now, for more on this story, Major General DN Khurana, a defence expert, is now joining us on WION at this hour. General, thank you so much for joining us at this hour. As we know, an unfortunate incident in India today. As we understand, a chopper crash carrying General Rawat, other senior defence professionals, defence officials as well. What more can you tell us at this point, as well as the rescue operations that are currently underway?
Well, it's a very unfortunate accident which has taken place. Mi-17 is supposed to be one of the safest helicopters, and particularly this one was the latest version. And then carrying a VVIP, the Chief of Defence Staff, extra precautions are taken. So apparently it appears to be either a weather, but I've been in that area, I've served there for a couple of years. I do not think the mountains there or the hills there are so dangerous that an accident could have taken place. So it obviously it appears to be some kind of a mechanical or technical problem, but it is very unfortunate. And looking at the photographs and the accident site, and the fact that we have only a few wounded survivors, is a very, very sad and unfortunate thing. And we are praying that we have our Chief of Defence Staff safe, and also maximum number of people should be safe there.
Right.
But then we are waiting desperately for the news.
Absolutely. So as you just pointed out, it's very hard to come out with accurate information. There's a lot of speculation and conjecture that we don't want to feed into. So just expanding on what you just said, tell us a little bit more about this Russian-made helicopter that was involved. And also, as you mentioned, the weather and terrain, could they have in any which way contributed to this chopper crash?
Yeah, firstly, let me tell you about the Mi-17 Russian helicopters. These are supposed to be one of the safest helicopters in the world. They're twin engines. So even if one engine backs up or something, the other engine takes care of it. And secondly, this is the latest version. And then we have a thing called a VIP squadron, which carries only the top people in the country, the president, the prime minister, the chief of defense staff, the army chiefs, or the services chiefs, and so on and so forth. So therefore, from my point of view, I cannot understand how a technical failure could have occurred in a short distance. The distance from Coimbatore to Wellington, which is the Defence Services Staff College, where he was going to address the students and the officers, would not be more than about 15 minutes worth of flying. And as we come along from Coimbatore, you're climbing up towards the hills, towards Ooty. There are no hills that even in a bad weather that he would go and crash into it. So apparently it seems to have been a very serious technical problem. I don't understand what could have gone wrong, but I can only say that it could be a very serious technical problem which was not in the control of the pilot. It might have caught fire. Otherwise, even on one engine, this helicopter can, glide along to a safer place. But from what you see, the crash site, it has crashed into a jungle close to a living area. And the damage is absolutely enormous. So we are only praying to God. I, as a soldier, of course, one feels bad for anyone going away, but our Chief of Defence Staff, India's first Chief of Defence Staff, we would pray to God that he is safe, and along with him, we hope many more will be safe.
Absolutely, sir. Just expanding and a follow-up question on what you just mentioned. Let's talk about the rescue operations. As we understand, General Rawat, his wife, senior defense officials were in the chopper. They were among the 14 people on board. That is what we can confirm so far. Reports of casualties and injuries are coming in as we speak, so it's difficult to come up with an exact number. But can you tell us a little bit more about the rescue operations and the challenges in the region?
Yes. You see, from what we understand mainly from the news, this one has landed or crashed ahead of the roadhead. Roadhead is up to the point where the vehicles can go. So it is crashed into the jungle, into the mountainous terrain ahead of it. So therefore, imagine people reaching there first, then trying to extricate the wounded and unfortunately fatal fatalities, carrying them to the roadhead, and there hopefully that by the time the ambulances would have arrived, some medical aid would have arrived, and then to take them, the nearest hospital is the military hospital in Wellington, where I have spent about 2-3 years. And it's not one of the higher echelons of hospital, because it is meant to cater for officers who are attending courses and so on and so forth. So therefore, I think it would have taken time to rescue them. The rescue would have been very painful, carrying them as you saw them in blankets and dhotis and so on and so forth. And I feel dreadful. I feel very dreadful about it. And we are waiting to hear the good news that at least some people have survived, and particularly our Chief of Defence Staff. A very fine general, one of the finest generals we have produced ever. He's years behind me. Sorry, but I admire the man, I admire the general, and we only pray for his good health and recovery.
Absolutely, sir. That's what we're all praying for. Just talking about what the Indian Air Force said earlier in a tweet, they said that an inquiry has now been ordered to ascertain the cause of this accident. What more could this inquiry entail?
You see, this is a normal SOP, standard operating procedure. Whenever there's a crash of the aircraft, immediately an inquiry is ordered to find out the cause of it. Was it technical failure? Was it a human failure? Was it a weather which, packed up and therefore they lost the bearing and crashed into the mountains? This is a normal SOP. So I wouldn't say anything more than that. Just because we have our topmost defense officer being carried in that along with his wife, the importance goes up. Otherwise, this is a normal standing operator procedure of the Air Force. Whenever a crash takes place, immediately a report of inquiry is ordered to find out the causes of it. Now, I don't know whether some pilots, there were 5 Air Force personnel, including the 2 pilots, whether any one of them survived. We have no information who survived. So, therefore, it will be based on the instruments that they will gain from there. They will base on certain eyewitnesses because it's very close to a village. Whether it was coming down with a fire on, or did the fire catch after it crashed? And then they will look at the kind of, whether it has gone over a distance after hitting the hilltop, or has it landed with a, like a stone. So there are various issues. Those will require the technical inquiry. But, the unfortunate part is that will come later. That we have these 14 people and then we just can't afford it. We can't afford it.
Right, absolutely, sir. Just apprising our viewers of some information that has just trickled in. As we know, the Indian Defence Minister has apprised the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi of the situation, and sources now tell us that we can expect a statement tomorrow in Parliament on the crash of this military chopper with the Chief of Defence Staff on board, of course. This is what sources are now telling us. Coming back to you, sir, tell us a little bit more about the rescue operations and the challenges ahead.
You see, the rescue operation would have taken place by now. It's at least a couple of hours or 3 hours by the time people came to know. And they have taken away the wounded to the hospital. And the nearest hospital, as I said, is about, I don't know exactly how far away from Wellington, but would be not more than 40 minutes or 45 minutes from the roadhead. But to take to the roadhead where the vehicles are parked itself would have been a very hazardous task. And imagine people seriously burnt and wounded badly. To carry them in blankets and carry them in, dhotis and all, would have caused further damage. So it would have been a very difficult. But from the news that we pick up, the villagers seem to have been the first responders, and they reached there before the police and the others could reach, which is heartening to know that in our country people still go to help when there is a disaster like that.
Right.
But it must have been a very difficult rescue operation with the fire on, and you can imagine the metal absolutely mingled up, bodies mingled up inside, and it's a large helicopter carrying 14 people, can carry even more. So it must have been extremely difficult, the rescue from there.
Right. General, just talking about something that you'd mentioned earlier, we earlier on the broadcast also spoke to some aviation experts and defense analysts about 2 factors, namely weather and terrain playing a huge role when it comes to operations like this, be it the rescue operation or the initial chopper crash. Can you enlighten our viewers about the same?
You see, now let's not talk about the weather, because the weather would be, we would have known if there was a bad weather. By now your channels were so efficient and your reporters reached the spot very soon. There doesn't seem to have been a bad weather in that area. So to me it looks that there's a technical problem, and he is then crashed into a terrain which is forested, hilly terrain, both forested and hills, and it is away from the road. So therefore the terrain would be a major factor in the recovery and getting people out from the rescue. Otherwise, terrain could not have caused. Then, if he had run into a hill straight on, that could have been because of weather, that he couldn't see and you run into a hill. But he doesn't seem to have gone into the hill. It seems to have crashed into a jungle. And if you notice from the pictures that we are seeing, there is no, head-on hill into which he has crashed. So therefore, it is disastrous. It is, and also, mind you, we have a very large fleet of Mi-17. It is our workhorse of the Air Force, and the Army uses it in a big way, for logistics and other purposes. So I think it's a bit of a strong blow to us from that point of view.
Right. Just coming back to something we discussed earlier, for all our viewers who are tuning into WION right now, as we understand, an IAF Mi-17 V5 helicopter was involved in this chopper crash. General, can you tell us a little more details about this chopper, its make and its primary purposes?
Mi-17 is one of the largest helicopters, twin engine, for basically used for logistics, which means for personnel in stores. It can go into being a large size helicopter. It can fly up to a fairly good height of, I think, if I remember, up to about 15,000 feet from the ground. But I'm not very sure of it. But it is one of the most important air vehicles that we have with us, both for the support of the ground forces and for the Air Force purposes. You can imagine the load it can carry. It can land at high altitude airstrips, or even on a landing ground, or even on a helipad, just enough for him to land vertically down and take off. So it is one of the finest machines, and it's going to be quite a revelation to find out what went if it was a technical failure.
Right. Sir, just wrapping up our discussion here, tell us a little bit about the rescue operations. You mentioned that they would have wrapped up. Of course, we're all hoping for a speedy recovery. We're hoping to hear good news. What are your expectations and hopes at this moment?
I would rather not hazard a guess. Looking at the crash site, looking at the fire, looking at the kind of rescue, the way the people pulling out the bodies, literally, you know, when the metal mangles up and there's a fire, well, you can imagine. So if they're saying 3 or 4 are in the hospital, but that's not a very good news. And we don't know what is the degree of burns, or, you know, when you crash like this, there can be other damages too. So I'm afraid it's not a good. I would not have any prognosis to make on that.
Right.
It will be very, very unfortunate. But let's pray for it, and let's hope, let's hope for the best for the Chief of Defence Staff and his family, and of course the others. But there's going to be heavy loss of life, I can imagine that.
Right. Major General DN Khurana, thank you so much for all your inputs, and thank you for joining us on WION at this hour on this story.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just apprising all our viewers who have tuned into WION World is One at this hour. This is the big story that we're tracking today. A military chopper carrying Chief of Defence Staff Bipin Rawat and 13 others crashed shortly after takeoff in Tamil Nadu in India. The Indian Air Force has confirmed the same. What more can we tell you so far is that 5 bodies have been found from the crash site and 2 people have been taken to the hospital with severe burn injuries. A search and rescue operation is currently underway. General Rawat, his wife, other senior defence officials, Air Force personnel were among the 14 people on board. That is something else that we can confirm at this point. Earlier in the day, the Indian Air Force had tweeted that an IAF Mi-17 V5 helicopter with General Bipin Rawat on board met with an accident today near Coonoor in Tamil Nadu. And the inquiry has now been ordered to ascertain the cause of the accident. The helicopter that was carrying India's Chief of Defence Staff Bipin Rawat was an Indian Air Force Mi-17 V5 helicopter. The chopper had taken off from the Sulur Air Base. It was on its way to Wellington in Coimbatore. This chopper is a modern transport helicopter used by the Indian Air Force. It happens to be a Soviet-designed Russian helicopter. The chopper is designed to carry personnel, cargo and equipment and VVIPs, such as General Rawat. It is also capable of dropping tactical air assault forces and reconnaissance teams. Equipped with modern avionics, the helicopter is capable of operating in any geographical and climatic conditions. The helicopter can also fly in adverse weather situations. Remember, weather and terrain are 2 factors that have been pointed out by defense analysts and aviation experts in this story. WION World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.